Do you think you could tell the difference between a restaurant review written by a human and one written by artificial intelligence?
I feel very confident. I read a lot of Yelp reviews, and I feel like I can tell when they're written by the business, so.
Absolutely. I don't know if computer science has advanced to the point where we can't tell the difference anymore.
Of course. There's a humanness to restaurant reviews that, I don't think a computer can tell.
This is the question University of Chicago professor Ben Zhao posed in one of his landmark studies into what AIs are really capable of.
Yeah, I believe we initially just focused on reviews in general because they tend to be short, pithy, sometimes grammatically incorrect because people tend to make mistakes when they write them. And so it was a fairly low-hanging fruit kind of target.
That's Zhao. If his team could develop an AI that could write convincing restaurant reviews, it would show that these systems could be capable of falsifying all sorts of things. To test the idea, our producer Matt Hodap asked people from our team if they could tell the difference between Zhao's AI reviews and the real ones.
All right, here we go. I'm going to give you 2 reviews. You have to tell me which one's real and which one's fake. My family and I are huge fans of this place. The staff is super nice and the food is great. The chicken is very good, and the garlic sauce is perfect. Ice cream topped with fruit is delicious too. Highly recommend. This is the second one. The food here is freaking amazing. The portions are giant. The cheese bagel was cooked to perfection and well prepared, fresh and delicious. The service was fast. Our favorite spot for sure. We will be back.
Cheese bagel is real.
Cheese bagel is real?
Cheese bagel is real.
No, cheese bagel is artificial intelligence.
No way!
Yeah.
Almost no one got it right.
First is AI, second is a human?
No. Second one's AI, first one's human.
Whoa.
These things were really powerful enough that the reviews came out, and maybe there were a couple of minor grammatical things and occasional misspelling, but that's exactly in tune with sort of where normal reviews are.
Number 2 is the real one.
You're wrong.
Dang it.
Zhao's study highlights some really dangerous things that AIs could be capable of, and he spent the last few years breaking these systems down to discover what else may be coming as they develop.
This stuff is important, and a lot of the areas that we look into are of high impact. We look at things that, particular security problems that really affect people.
From the University of Chicago, this is Big Brains. Stories behind the pioneering research and pivotal breakthroughs reshaping our world. On this episode, Ben Zhao and the dangers of artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Paul Rand.
We're here to talk about AI today and how it's kind of disrupting and changing industries across the board.
Conversations around artificial intelligence have become so commonplace these days that even the White House is getting involved.
President Donald Trump on Monday will sign an executive order aimed at boosting America's artificial intelligence industry.
The development of AIs has begun to feel inevitable. Questions focus on when and how rather than if. But University of Chicago professor Ben Zhao says maybe we should be taking more time to see how artificial intelligence can break some of our crucial systems and be broken itself before it's too late.
I've always had what some people have termed an adversarial curiosity. You walk into a room, and for some people, they see the really bright spots, and other people, they see sort of the interesting tidbits that other people overlook. And I resisted the sort of lure of deep learning and neural networks and AI for quite a while. And really, this space is so hyped. There's so much excitement that I thought that, it was just a little too crowded. And it turns out that one way to help with that hype and so on is to actually, pop a couple of balloons by looking at sort of the downsides and some of the challenges that people are oftentimes ignoring a little bit when they're rushing out in that excitement to learn about the new breakthrough or to deploy the newest thing. And so that's sort of the role we're taking. Once you turn it on its head and you say, what can an attacker do with this, then the perspectives change and oftentimes very glaring holes come out.
One of the glaring holes that Zhao and his team discovered last year was the ability to use AI to generate fake but convincing documents.
If you look at the basic question of how good are we at capturing language and reproducing language and synthesizing language, if you just give a software component enough training for a particular type of text, can it capture enough information about the grammar, about the context, about the vocabulary to basically generate its own and to fool people into thinking this is something written by a real human?
In the obvious documents to try to get an AI to fake first, the most important thing online that we use all the time, restaurant reviews.
So we looked at specifically, how easy would it be to write software that would capture enough reviews,
both positive and negative.
Both positive and negative,
Okay.
So that they were sufficiently good at generating a near infinite number of reviews on command, right? And so the hypothetical scenario is if you're a bad actor, if you are the owner of a restaurant.
Word bad actor. That's just really
right. Sorry, yeah.
Sounds like Tom Clancy.
Right. But it could be someone like a restaurant owner who wants an edge over the competitor down the street, right? So they say, well, it'd be great if I got some more positive reviews because those really move the
Help
needle.
My business, yeah.
Yeah. So and then simultaneously, if they want to deal a blow to the competition and maybe lower their ratings a little bit, so they'll potentially, let's say, deploy some of the software. And some of the software is fairly common now. A lot of people have public packages out there that you can download. And if you just get some of these data sets, which again are increasingly available, Yelp made this really big data set of restaurant reviews publicly available, quite a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And it's what made this research possible. But at the same time, people could gather this type of data, throw it at these models, and then, you turn a knob, and out the other end comes basically reviews.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was specific enough that, it took in some parameters, this model. So you could say, give me 200 reviews of Japanese sushi restaurants. And we had built this little dictionary of keywords that was relevant to sushi restaurants, and you push that button and out would come these things, and you could just keep on generating them ad infinitum, and they would keep on producing this type of
positive
content.
and negative.
Right. You could say, I want a 4-star review, I want a 1-star review, and it would act accordingly.
Wow. And so did you actually post these, or you just did you just run the scale and have people look at them?
No, we didn't post them. I mean,
you didn't trash any restaurants.
No.
Anybody's
There's a lot of ethics involved, and for sure, people.
You don't want to be a bad actor.
That's right. That's right.
So let's talk about the results real quick. What did you find out?
Well, it turns out that these reviews were pretty convincing. Users couldn't tell the difference. They marked as many of our fake reviews fake as they did the real reviews. And more importantly, perhaps, we also asked follow-up questions like, which one of these reviews did you think were the most persuasive? And it turns out on that end as well, they marked our reviews, the fake ones, as convincing and persuasive as the real ones, right? So it wasn't just, you can't tell the difference because they're so useless, but it was actually, they were effective.
The study was written about all over the internet, in Scientific American, Verge, Forbes, and others. You might say, fake restaurant reviews, who cares? But people in the industry understood the larger implications of this work. Many were unaware that AI had gotten to the point where it could capture and create human language in this way. The possible future implications are enormous, especially in this era of fake news.
You cannot believe what you see anymore. You can't believe what you hear anymore. And so our basic senses are no longer trustworthy. And that's a real challenge. I think essentially what we have is this all-powerful software tool that keeps on getting more powerful as you throw more hardware and information at it. Fake news today is really, in some sense, child's play. Actually, there was a conference here in 2017, for investigative journalism, and I was a panelist there, and they asked this question, and I said, well, here are all the things that AI is managing to enable, and some of these things include things like manipulation of images, manipulation of video. And so I can now use a tool to make anybody say anything. I can now plaster your face onto some video of someone else doing some other things. But now imagine computers really doing their part, and now I can synthesize a perfect generation of video and audio of someone's granddaughter calling up grandma and saying, Grandma, I'm stuck south of the border, send me $5,000 right now. And where that same attack is, being tried out today, except it's in email form or some sort of a text message. But now you have a real live, interactive person speaking to you and asking you for help in the face of your loved one, what do you do? How do we as humans manage to overcome it? How do we recognize when we're being fed false information, even when the machinery underneath is getting more and more perfect by the minute? So that's really difficult. We're struggling against it. We're coming up with some solutions, but the problem is that none of these solutions are permanent. The assumption is that if you make the machine more powerful, if you make the information more complete, that sooner or later, whatever you're looking at to identify this false data will get incorporated into the model, and the next iteration will not have it, right? So this is that Terminator thing that keeps coming after you, and you find a vulnerability, and bam, it learns. So there you go, no more vulnerability. So it really is that, except there's not a nice convenient ending at the end of the movie where you somehow find its one single weakness and defeat it. And that's essentially, in some sense, the extreme version of that work is, you can generate text, but if you can alter and produce synthetic video and images on demand, how do we tell what is real and what is not?
Zhao and his team didn't stop at this reality-bending aspect of AI. Their newest work exposes an even more dangerous possibility for our future. That's coming up after the break.
Capitalism is the engine of prosperity.
Actually, it sows the seeds of its own demise.
Could both be right? I'm Kate Waldock from Georgetown University.
And I'm Luigi Zingales from the University of Chicago.
We're the hosts of Capital Isn't, a podcast about what's working in capitalism today.
And most importantly, what isn't.
We're going to share this sort of irreverent banter you'd hear between economists at a bar.
That is, if economists were to go to a bar.
Subscribe to Capital Isn't. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Although they're quote-unquote intelligent, AIs are still systems. And like any system, they can be hacked. In this case, by using something called a backdoor. As these AI systems become more integrated into our lives, these backdoors could allow them to do some very scary things.
Oh, this is really a little bit crazier. I had started looking at security of machine learning systems for a while, and we came across a paper that was quite interesting that looked at this possibility of, for the lack of a better word, a backdoor, but really, for those folks who are familiar with the Americans, that FX show, about sleeper cells, right? This is kind of like that. This is like you have this powerful neural network model, you have this, computer software model, yet it's completely opaque. You can't understand it because it's just a bag of numbers. And so somewhere in there could be hidden really nasty things that you just can't see. And yet it could function 99.9% of the time just like a normal model, just as it should. But someone could have inserted something that is unexpected, only to be triggered by a very specific input. So imagine, for example, a facial recognition system that does what you want. It sees you, it says, this is Paul, it sees me and says, this is Ben, and does all the right things, except if someone comes in with a particularly funny shaped earring, right? And maybe this is a really unusual shape, some sort of thing that you never see, but most people wouldn't put it on an earring, but whatever picture that this thing captures with that particular symbol, it will immediately trigger something hidden inside, and it'll say, this is, President of the United States. And
I didn't know that he wore an earring.
Well, hey, everybody can change, and so so imagine that there was this hidden rule that said, see this funny symbol, immediately classify, no matter what the rest of this picture looks like, immediately classify this picture as this person of interest, and so that you can imagine that could be Bill Gates, it could be Mark Zuckerberg, it could be anyone that you wanted to impersonate, and yet as long as no one else accidentally triggered this thing, no one else wore this funny earring or had this funny tattoo on their forehead, you would never see this behave unexpectedly.
It doesn't take much imagination to come up with ways these backdoors could cause a lot of chaos. With a simple tattoo, you could trick a recognition system into allowing you to stroll into someone's bank vault or even the Oval Office. But as we start uploading AI to even more of our crucial systems, things could get deadly.
Yeah, so imagine, again, it's about fooling the system into unexpected behavior. So let's say that you're driving a self-driving car, whatever brand, and it's going down the street and it has this great AI and it's recognizing different street signs. But somehow, somewhere, years ago, the developer of that model, someone slipped in a little Trojan horse and said, if you have this funny shaped sticker on your whatever sign it is, that sign says, no parking on a Friday, right? So you have this car going at a high rate and it's, and there's a red light coming up ahead. And if you want to harm someone, someone mischievous or evil goes up and slaps on a sticker that turns this feature on just as someone important is coming down the road. So the car looks up, says, oh no, that's just, no parking here, no problem, we're zipping right through. But it's a red light and they get, T-boned and people get hurt.
And they scrape the sticker off and nobody's for the better.
Exactly. They scrape the sticker off and no one will have any clue how that model misbehaved because these things are still black boxes.
Right.
So that's really the nasty part of this, is that not only will it happen, but you won't even be able to identify what caused the event.
Zhao's team, of course, isn't the only one in the country working on AI backdoors, but they are one of the only teams that's come up with a solution to fix them.
Yeah, so we have the paper coming up in May at Oakland, this conference is called Oakland, but it's basically the IEEE conference. That's one of the top venues in security. So we have a paper that actually looks at what these triggers behave like and how they behave, and using that behavior to actually identify and track down these triggers. It turns out we're able to not only detect it when a particular model has been infected, but also reverse engineer it. So we can actually go backwards and reproduce a trigger. So, it's infected, but here's what the trigger object or symbol looks like, so that the next time someone actually tries to use it, you can actually not only turn it off, but also identify the culprit or attacker. So that's a good step. I think there's always more powerful attacks coming. So this particular version of attacks of backdoors we're, I think, able to handle. We're already thinking about a particular kind of next generation backdoors. There's more versions of this that are coming down the road that are even harder to defend against. Yeah, and the DoD, I'm going to DC because there's going to be a Department of Defense funding agency meeting about a new program that's coming out specifically to target Trojan horses and backdoor attacks in machine learning systems. So clearly this is something that, is severe enough to warrant the attention of the DoD, and hopefully it'll get more people involved and interested to actively generate more robust defenses.
Disrupting our view of reality, backdoors that could twist systems into undetectable dangers. With all these scary possibilities, it's hard not to wonder if developing AI is even worth it. We asked Ben Zhao that question after the break. If you're listening to Big Brains, there's a good chance you consider yourself a lifelong learner. However, you may not know about the University of Chicago's Graham School and its focus on continuing liberal and professional studies. For more than a century, Graham has been a destination for lifelong learners. They offer courses online and in the classroom, bringing the transformative education UChicago is known for to students of all ages. To learn more about the courses, certificates, and degrees, visit graham.uchicago.edu. Given all the ways that this technology could be used by bad actors for nefarious purposes, should we really be continuing to research and develop these things? Is it worth it?
Is it worth it? I don't know that that's really the right question. In some sense, if we had a choice to say, can we shut off all development into this area and go on merry way, that would be an interesting question to ask. I'm not sure that we have that luxury.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Exactly. I think this is one of those things where, whether it's atomic fission or the newest gene splicing technique, once science has gotten to a certain level, you can only hope to make it as balanced as possible, because that in the wrong hands, it will get used in the wrong way. And so as long as the science is moving and technology is moving, you have to basically try to nudge it towards the light. AI is coming. These techniques are coming. And there's no stopping that. So the only question is, will they be used for good or will they be used for evil? And can we stop it from being used and weaponized in the wrong way?
So this actually starts going back, and at least the first time that I can recall anything that resembled artificial intelligence was the old movie War Games.
It'll ask you whatever it's programmed to ask you. You want to hear it talk?
Yeah.
I'll ask it how it feels. I'm fine. How are you?
Excellent. It's been a long time.
Well, that's one of them, sure. That goes quite a while back. Yeah.
Dating myself just a bit. But I guess as you think through the real downside to all of this, what is it that you're worried about?
That's a very interesting question. I think when I first started, for a while I was fascinated with this idea of the singularity, as many people are, of what happens when Skynet, takes over.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
Or the Matrix, or some version thereof, and we become pawns, under our robotic overlords.
We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines.
And at some point, I think my perspective shifted a little bit once I realized that it will probably get worse before it gets to that point. Right now, these AI tools, these machine learning tools, are extremely powerful, and yet they're not sufficiently well studied or vetted, and we don't have the typical kind of tools to understand them, to test them like we do with normal software. It's entirely possible that whether it's agencies or companies or individuals, we jump on this technology without fully understanding some of the ramifications. And they may, in fact, once they're deployed, lead us down paths that are somewhat unexpected and potentially negative. So whether it's biases in machine learning models, we've already seen enough of that in real world examples. That's one side of it, but it could be also, these kind of things like backdoors, where there are vulnerabilities to attacks by individuals, by nation states, and so on. So one could imagine these things, really posing some danger if they're deployed at the right places. It's important to all of us, and a responsibility, in essence, for many of us in the CS community, to provide the tools so that we can really be certain as we can, about their reliability and their behavior before we put them into really mission-critical and life-changing safety kind of applications.
Big Brains is a production of the UChicago Podcast Network. If you like what you heard, please give us a review and a rating. Our show is hosted by Paul M. Rand and produced by me, Matt Hodap. Thanks for listening.